The Bank of England predicts a tough recession in Great Britain and promptly has to fear for its independence. What a wonder. Amid the debate over reforming the Bank of England mandate, their head, Andrew Bailey, has announced that he will remain in office for the full term of office. He has been in office since March 16, 2020, and will remain in office until March 2028, according to the Bank of England. He doesn't think there's a great desire in the country right now to challenge central bank independence. That's what Bailey told BBC Radio on Friday. He's open to a discussion with the future government on how the Bank of England should work. However, it is crucial to have an independent central bank. He was responding to plans by Liz Truss, the favourite in the race to succeed outgoing Conservative Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Truss wants to put the 25-year-old mandate, which made the central bank independent of politics, to the test now. The model, devised by then Labour Chancellor of the Exchequer Gordon Brown, would allow the central bank to set interest rate at its own discretion in whatever way it judges would best meet the government's inflation target. The central bank has been criticised several times in the ranks of the Conservatives for having reacted too slowly in monetary policy in the rapidly rising inflation, which is severely eroding the purchasing power of the British people. The UK central bank's surprisingly gloomy economic outlook has sparked debate about its independence here. Potential new PM Liz Truss is looking for a scapegoat now. The Bank of England has taken a beating after this gloomy outlook for the coming months. Governor Andrew Bailey has prepared the British for a severe downturn. Towards the end of the year, the economy will start to shrink, a process that central bank economists believe will continue throughout 2023. It would be the longest recession since the financial crisis. They also expect more than 13% inflation for the final quarter of 2022. In Germany, it's shrinking at the moment, by the way. If the forecasts come true, hardly any other industrialized country would be hit as hard by the current turbulences as Great Britain. And that's social explosives. Bailey argued that Vladimir Putin was primarily to blame for the inflation. The Russian attack on Ukraine has pushed up energy prices, but Germany would have been hit harder if it was only that. The war has an economic price, Bailey said on Thursday, when interest rates were raised by 0.5 percentage points to 1.75%, the largest increase in 27 years. If we don't act now, inflation will take hold, he warned. Then it will get worse and we have to act more strongly, he said. The Bank of England attributes around half of the price increase expected for the months of October to December directly to rising energy costs. One reason for this is that regulator Ofgem will significantly increase the price cap for household energy bills in October. Mine will rise by 20% in October, by the way. In addition, the British Central Bank presented its plans for how the mountain of bonds bought together as part of the monetary policy and the easing is to be removed. As the first Western central bank, it wants to start what is known as quantitative tightening. Government bonds are to be sold at a rate of £10 billion a quarter from September. If you take into account that British government bonds with a volume of £40 billion will also expire in the next 12 months and will not be replaced, the central bank's portfolio will be reduced by almost a tenth within the year. In view of the alarming inflation forecast, some of his critics accuse Bailey of falling asleep at the wheel. For too long, the central bank dismissed increasing inflation as a temporary phenomenon and held on to the historically low interest rates since the financial crisis. Well, they maybe have believed the government that Brexit has no consequences. And although the economy has long since regained momentum, the Bank of England has continued to buy bonds, so the accusation. In addition, gas prices were already rising before the Russian invasion because the comparatively climate-friendly fuel for the transition to a low-emission economy was in high demand from many countries at the same time. But still, the British are doing worse than the others. Realistically, however, inflation would not be much lower if the Bank of England had already started tightening the reins in the first half of 2021. In addition, it started earlier than the other major central banks. The new rate hike is the sixth in a row, even if the previous ones were limited to quarter points. And Secretary of State Liz Truss, who is leading the polls in the race to succeed Boris Johnson, even questioned the independence of the central bank. Politicians like Truss appear to be looking for a scapegoat to blame for the misery as voter anger mounts in the coming months, although they know they are to blame for this. It's noteworthy that Bailey does not find a word of self-criticism, even though the inflation rate has been far from the 2% inflation target for months. He has to take some blame too, but the government much more. This may be due to the fact that the deviations since the financial crisis are not the exception, but almost the rule, even if not on this scale. If the inflation target was missed, the Federal Reserve Governor, the central bank governor, wrote a formal letter to the Chancellor of the Exchequer to inform him. The Chancellor of the Exchequer wrote back in a similar meaningless form, and the matter was settled. After all, the central bank is independent. When future Prime Minister Gordon Brown, that time he was future, gave independence to the Bank of England a quarter of a century ago, his main concern was to give the new Labour government economic credibility. It was a radical departure from the status quo following the nationalization of the central bank in 1946. Suddenly, chancellors of the Exchequer could no longer cut interest rates at will to create a boom or quickly raise them again afterwards to stave off the resulting inflation. Brown thus followed the zeitgeist of the onset of globalization. However, the steady growth and low inflation of the years before the financial crisis could just as easily be attributed to the increasing weight of the People's Republic of China in the world economy as to the careful management of monetary policy by the experts at independent central banks. People need to understand the importance of central bank independence as a cornerstone of economic policy. That's what Bailey told the House of Commons Finance Committee last month. A Prime Minister Truss could topple that pillar because she wants to cut taxes quickly to generate growth. Higher interest rates that could become necessary as a result are not a big problem for them. As far as the Bank of England's mandate is concerned, there are signs that the Treasury will have more say in the future. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.